All right. Well, unless you've been living in a hole under a rock or without internet otherwise, you already know that the new Project Cars 3 announcement trailer has dropped, as well as gameplay footage, and it has kind of set the internet on fire, at least for sim racers. More so than Kim Kardashian's ass ever could. So, I've got a few thoughts on that, and I figured, you know what, let's talk about them, but let's talk about them while doing a few laps at the Nordschleife. And I haven't written these thoughts down. It's not scripted. I'm going to be just sort of trying to formulate these thoughts and express them to you as they come to me, and doing so while I'm lapping the Nordschleife. So hopefully I can communicate and express myself on as far as my opinions on this in a reasonable fashion that's relatively easy to understand and not too disjointed because of trying to focus on the corners. Anyway, having said that, let's go ahead and get underway. All right, for starters, we are last place in a GT4 class. And we're going to try to work our way forwards while we talk about Project Cars 3 and play Project Cars 2.
Right side. He's on your right. On the right
So,
side.
of course, as someone who's playing Project Cars 2, I'm a fan of the series. I think that kind of goes without saying. And like many of you, when I saw the trailer, and it consists of a bunch of drifting and a bunch of like slamming into competitors to get by through the corners, and general sort of very arcadey looking action, I came away with that with some deep concerns, like many people. It's one thing for Slightly Mad Studios to try to make the game more accessible to a wider audience, and I understand that. I also understand that I can't fully appreciate how powerful that force is, because it costs so much money to develop games. You really need to sell them to a lot of people to recoup your investment. But I think what's getting lost in the mix is people are so passionate and reacting with so much emotion over it that a lot of people I see are prejudging it. Now, it gave me the same concerns as it did everybody else. I don't want this thing to be dumbed down and turned away and into something other than what I've already grown to love. So I care deeply about the physics simulation and the level of adjustment that you can do. But if they're able to incorporate, driver aids and bring extra audience in without losing what I love about Project Cars, then, I would be okay with that. As long as that's what's happening. And I'm not saying that's what's happening, because like everyone else, nobody knows what's happening. Not really, except for the people at Slightly Mad and people they're testers who've played it, the developers. They know what's happening. People who watch the trailer on the internet don't really know what's happening. They have their suspicions, and I hope the ones that are the most cynical among them are wrong. They might be right, but I hope they're wrong. But the point is, in all things, you need to apply reason, and we need to not prejudge something before we actually know what it is. People are so angry and so emotional over it, And I get it. People are passionate about sim racing. I'm passionate about sim racing. I love it. I don't, want to see something that I truly love destroyed. But you can't say that's what's happening before the game's even been released yet. So I think we need to reserve judgment, and I think we need to, hold Slightly Mad accountable if they do screw up the series. But I think we need to hold off on judging it until it comes out. And I think one of the reasons that, at least me personally, I'm so, like many others, emotionally invested in this series is because I'm a console racer. I don't play games on the PC. I don't have access to, R Factor and Race Room and Automobilista and iRacing. I don't have access to these things. So what I have access to is just what's available to me on consoles. And that's, traditionally been Forza, Gran Turismo, F1 2019, and as of a few years ago, finally Project Cars and Assetto Corsa. And the last two that I just mentioned, Project Cars and Assetto Corsa, for better or worse, are really the closest things as console gamers that we have to sim racing. Now, Assetto Corsa Competizione will be released later this month for the consoles, and I'm really looking forward to that. Although, it's changed from its first iteration where it was just sort of lots of cars, lots of classes, and now it's an officially licensed Blancpain GT series, which is cool, but I think it's going to limit, the type of content that you get in the game now. So what that leaves us with, of all the racing games that we have on the console, Project Cars is the only sort of true racing sim that console gamers have access to, that's fully featured with a bunch of different car categories and classes and tracks and stuff. With Assetto Corsa Competizione being focused on the GT series, the Blancpain series, the scope of what they offer is going to be much more limited. Still great, still looking forward to it, but that just leaves us with one remaining sim racing series left, and that's Project Cars. And as a sim racer, I hold that very dear. If we were to, I need to shift. If we were to just lose all of the quote-unquote real racing sims from consoles in favor of everything going more arcadey, I would be very sad. I would miss the old Project Cars a great deal. But we don't know that that's what's happening yet, so we need to reserve judgment. But that's because that's so special to all of us sim racers. That's why we're so emotional about it. Also, maybe a little too emotional about it, if you know what I mean. I see so many just vitriolic and acerbic comments about the state of what Project Cars 3 is, and meanwhile, nobody outside of Slightly Mad has played it. So nobody knows what it is, for sure, anyway, as I screw up that braking. So yeah, sim racing is very important to sim racers. And as a niche market, we might be sort of underserved by the industry. And we'd hate to see what we are given by the industry taken away from us in the names of, just the bottom line, just trying to make a business work. By making it appeal to more people. But one of the things that, aside from people trying to run a business successfully, one of the things that people are maybe failing to appreciate is that the people who are at Slightly Mad developing the Project Car series are also us. They're sim racers. That's why they're making Project Cars, because they love the same thing that we do. So I think we're losing sight of the fact that what is important to us is also what's important to them. Now, you know, I'm not making a prediction one way or the other what Project Cars 3 is or isn't going to be. I don't know. But the point is that no one else knows either, outside of the people who are making it. So, you know, while we're all passionate and really up in arms about what is admittedly a launch trailer that is kind of disturbing to people who care about sim racing because of the way that it's presented. So yeah, I have the same concerns of everybody else, but let's hold judgment till the product comes out. Let's see what happens. I'm not saying that I don't care as much as the people leaving all the nasty, crazy comments. I do care, but you know, those people are losing their minds a little bit. I've also looked at some developer interviews since I watched that footage and tried to listen, you know, to what the guys at Slightly Mad are saying about their product. Excuse me. And, you know, some of their points I can see. In a lot of ways, really hardcore sim racing is off-putting to anybody except sim racers. Woo! And let's just face it, as sim racers, we're very picky about what we like. We can sometimes be assholes about it. And if you really think about it, you have to admit that, oops, I should not have gone down the first there, but wasn't paying attention to my gears. But you have to think about one weird aspect of sim racing is that we're all, at least slightly in some way, a little bit masochistic. And what I mean by that is we want to see an unforgiving, realistic representation of physics. So when we do something in a game, like one of the first things that I'll do when I get a new sim is, you know, I'll push at the boundaries and see what happens. You know, I'll put on a little bit too much throttle coming out of a low-speed corner, and if I don't get too much wheel spin and oversteer, if I understeer on power coming out of a low-speed corner and go wide, that makes me smile. So kind of what essentially you're asking of the game is to, if I do something that I shouldn't have done, punish me for it. Please punish me, sim racing game. Punish me for doing the thing that I know better, but I was just too greedy on the loud pedal to do. So with sim racers being sort of weirdly masochistic and a history of being underserved by the industry and very passionate about the things that we care about, I can understand the deep emotional reaction that people are having towards that Project Cars 3 trailer and gameplay footage. But you know, if they can widen the game's appeal and still keep the physics the way that we like it, then great. Let's bring more people in to sim racing. Another thing that they mentioned too was controller support, and of course, you know, I drive with the wheel and pedals, and that's, I don't want to say that's the only way to do it, but you know, if you're serious, that's what you do. But sometimes I just want to sit back in my recliner and play with a controller, and like on a game like, say what you will about Gran Turismo Sport. I love Gran Turismo Sport. It's definitely a simcade, if you want to call it that, but that's okay. I embrace that. It's fun. I love it. But I can, on Gran Turismo Sport, I can sit back in my recliner with a controller and successfully play the game. Yeah, the game is nerfed a bit on the controller because those controller inputs, they're assuming that the player wants to do something a little less extreme with those sticks when they're steering than what they're actually doing. So there's some fuzzy logic in there, and there's some kind of nerfing of the way that the response is tied to the car because it needs to be that way. And Gran Turismo does that really well. I was going to say it's better than anybody, but the sort of haptic feedback in the triggers on the Xbox One controller in Forza do a phenomenal job of that too. That's amazing. But one thing that I can say about Project Cars, the whole series so far, is that it is unplayable with a controller. I mean, I tell people, if you, like, I love Project Cars, and I'll get on the bandwagon and sit up on a soapbox, and I will shout my love for Project Cars to the world. But I tell people, if you just have a controller, don't even bother. The controller is not a way to play Project Cars because it's basically unplayable. And that's one of the things that the developers were also talking about is making the game at least playable with a controller to help bring people in who otherwise are sort of either they're sort of casual racing game fans, or maybe they want to try out something a little bit deeper than the Forza Motorsport or Gran Turismo, but they're sort of kind of on the fence and they want an invitation in to this, and let's give them that. So kudos to Slightly Mad if that's in fact what they're doing. But at the end of the day, it all remains to be seen, and let's wait till the product ships before we place judgment on it. And that's all I really wanted to say. At any rate, I hope you enjoyed that. I hope I made some kind of sense there, but I guess we'll see. Oh, look, I podiumed. I didn't even realize that. I didn't have the positions up on the HUD, so I didn't even know where I had placed. So yeah, look at that, podiumed. Anyway, I hope I made a decent point, and I hope I appealed to people's reason. Let's reserve judgment. Yeah, I'm concerned as well, but man, I hope Project Cars 3 is good, because one thing that I can say is it really looks good. It graphically, it's a huge step up from Project Cars 2, so it definitely has that going for it. Like all of probably anybody that's watching this, I just hope the physics are up to par as well. But anyway, thanks for watching, and I will catch you in the next one.